Hi, this is another pagan priest back again after too long. It's taken me a while. Life happened, quarantine stuff, you know. And anyway, I was just watching a video by Genetically Modified Skeptic, and he was talking about how some Christians like to claim that the Western civilization was based on Judeo-Christian values and yada yada yada, which, like, he's giving the atheist stance, and I just wanted to come in with the pagan stance. I haven't finished watching the video, so I'm going to go do that, and he's probably going to hit many of the same topics, but I just wanted to put a video out there because I haven't made one in far too long, and his topic gets me fired up every time anyone mentions it. So, Western civilization was started by a bunch of gay pagan Greeks who had a lot of ideas and a lot of thoughts and a lot of philosophy. This philosophy ended up being taught by Aristotle to a young prince in Macedon by the name of Alexander, who proceeded to conquer the world, as it was known, and expand the border of that world. Then die as a very young man. In fact, I think around my age. I'd have to look up the exactly one, but I think he was around 23. And then you have the rise of Rome, who took a bunch of Greek ideas and just expanded upon that, and then expanded upon their state and conquered the entire known world as far as they were aware, except for parts of the East. Now, the Greeks were pagan. The Romans were pagan. The Romans conquered a place called Judea, named by the Romans Judea. Now, Judea was home to a monotheistic religious group, the Jews, the Hebrews. And they had a closed religion, a closed tradition, and it was just their belief. It made them extremely hard to fold into the empire because they didn't respect the idea that the other gods of the empire even existed at all, let alone were gods. They were at most demons, monsters, fiends, evil spirits, angels, but like angels that existed to draw you away from the right path and tempt you. And this led to a lot of tension and a lot of friction. It wasn't handled well by the Roman Empire, but it also, like, terrorism was a big thing. Then, a particular Hebrew gentleman and thinker and religious figure started a cult. The main things about this cult were kind of love your neighbor as yourself. If like looking at someone causes you to sin, rip out your eye. And if you're an adulterer, you're scum. And just that kind of thing. Then the cult leader ended up making a bunch of claims about being a god, and then he ended up being killed. There were claims of miracles, but most of those are only recorded decades or centuries after his death and alleged resurrection. That was Jesus Christ. I, as a pagan, am not willing to rule out that some, maybe even all of those things were actually perpetrated, or that he may have been a demigod child of a god. I don't know how likely that is, but his sheer enduring legacy and the miracles perpetrated in his name lead me to a degree of willingness to accept that there was power there in a spiritual, religious sense. Now, that cult of his was no longer, well, it wasn't accepted by the Jews, because they were like, no, he wasn't the Messiah, he was crazy, or a liar. And the Christians were like, yeah, well, we're going to take Gentiles as well as Jews. And the end is coming. The end of the world's about to be here. So you can persecute us, you can chase us to the ends of the earth, but we're going to be the ones who are laughing in the end, and the end is coming. Now, this insane version of the cult only lasted for maybe a century, 2 centuries, as it spread throughout the Roman Empire, and then a more moderate version of the cult prevailed and spread throughout the empire. That ended up becoming accepted as the imperial cult, and I will argue in a later video that played a significant role in the degradation and destruction of the Roman state, on top of the obvious and arguably more significant role that, like, the Roman military institution and the consequent, like, loyalty to general rather than to empire, or loyalty to just the corruption of the aristocracy, the division of the empire in later years, which it did not survive. And that all played a part, but I will be arguing in a better research, because this is all off the cuff, but I will be arguing in a better research video later that Christianity played a significant role. Now, Christianity brought with it the idea that you shouldn't expect your religion to give you things in this life. You should expect your boon to come after you die. It brought the belief that to suffer was somehow a noble thing rather than a regrettable tragedy to be protested against. It brought with it ideas of just the end is nigh. We're still in the doctrine. And then all of that contributed to the inability of really Western civilization to regroup. Because, well, if both sides can't have God on their side, if there's only one, so there can be no quarter given. Because they're wrong. And you're being persecuted, so you know you're right. And then you had so we're now into the Dark Ages, after the fall of the empire. You had the thread of Western civilization that was the descent from Rome, and you had the other thread that was the legacy in Christendom of Rome. Now, the church didn't like secular leaders gaining too much power because it threatened the church, and the church wasn't willing to involve themselves too much in temporal matters. So you ended up with Western civilization kind of just degrading. Then you had people being like, okay, but like, why don't we just act as if the church didn't matter? We'll pay their tithes and we'll say the right things, and we all know God exists, but we'll act as if it didn't matter, even though it very much does, definitely. And then you have the Renaissance, where they're basically returning to more pagan, more traditional Roman and Greek pagan cultural sensibilities before the Christianization of the empire. Hair. Problem with having too much of it. Although, I don't think I have too much of it yet. But yeah, and then you had getting distracted. The church being like, oh no, we're losing power, and then witch hunts. Just witch hunts, heresy, burnings, trials for heresy, inquisitions. Then you have indulgences and more corruption as they sort of settled in and more lip service was paid to them. And then you have the Protestant Reformation, which led to so much more bloodshed and so much more damage. Then you have more emphatic, no, there is the church and there's the state. You're on that side, we're on this side, you stay in your lane, we'll stay in ours. That is a secular viewpoint that couldn't come about under paganism, because under paganism it didn't need to. In Rome, you have the imperial cult. The imperial cult, like the imperial religion, as well as the cult itself, what they were about was doing the right things to keep the gods of the empire appeased and happy and the empire prospering. And as long as everyone was out for the rituals, who could be, it was all good. Didn't matter what you believed. And you could believe whatever you wanted and have your own temples, pardon me, as long as it wasn't overshadowing the gods of the empire, as long as it wasn't getting in the way of that. Now, when you had church and state under Christianity, and any monotheism, really, you have thought police. You have to believe what you're supposed to believe. You have to keep to the right beliefs. You have to venerate God the right way, because, and not just in your actions, in your belief, because otherwise you're failing. You're not properly religious, and so you are a sinner, and you should feel bad about that. And it becomes a method of control rather than just a superstition and an excuse for public holidays. Now, then you have separation of church and state, where the people can believe whatever they want as long as they check their beliefs at the door. And that I can get on board with. Like, I don't, even though I am a pagan priest, I don't think we need a return to Rome. We do well enough. We don't need the gods nudging us to success every moment of the day. It's helpful for having an empire that stands 1,000 years, or for victories in war, but, like, you don't need it the same way anymore. And that, yeah, I like separation of church and state. I am a pagan priest who takes the view that if someone wants to come and offer at my shrine, or pray at my shrine, or meditate at my shrine, they can, as long as I can personally stand them. And if it gets bigger, then they can, regardless. But I wouldn't want to have to go and be involved in government to be properly a priest. Anyway, that was a tangent. I don't know where I was going with that. And it's kind of just... monotheism is toxic and has no part in the actual foundation of Western civilization, except, honestly, the most noble thing that monotheism and Christianity in particular did for modern Western civilization was birth modern atheism, because that didn't exist before. You could be skeptical of the gods, you could even outright not believe they existed, but refusing all of religion just kind of wasn't really bothered with. It was an extremely unusual thing to do and an unusual stance to take, and Christianity is the reason why it's now common. And I'd say that's the best thing that Christianity ever did for Western civilization. I'm not even sure if it did anything else for Western civilization. Yeah. Oh, there was that time when the myths about the martyrs in the Colosseum saved the Colosseum, so I guess there's that. Anyway, I've been another pagan priest, and this is a bit more reasonably lengthed than my last video about sacrifice. So, yeah, enjoy the night, stay safe out there, everybody, and don't catch the pandemic. Yeah, there should be cards and stuff on the screen if I edited them in. If I didn't, there won't be. Have a lovely day. Goodbye.